Coming to you from McCurdy's Comedy Theater in Sarasota, Florida, it's the Open Bar Comedy Show. Hide your grandmas. Today's guest is Mr. TMI himself, Robert Baril. Watch his Open Bar Comedy special, Tall, Dark, and Grandpa. Here's your host, Ron Feingold.
Hi, everyone. This is Ron Feingold with Open Bar Comedy. This is the Open Bar Comedy Show. Today, we have Robert Baril. I have never met Robert. This is our first time sitting down, but we have a mutual friend in John DeBoer, who is a good friend of ours from Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And what is your relationship to John?
I met John through comedy, Acme Comedy Club in Minneapolis, and I think he's a Fargo guy, or at least that's what he does in his bit, Northern, which is even further north than Minneapolis. And just doing shows together and stuff like that.
Minneapolis is the home base, right? That's where you started? Mm-hmm. How long ago was that?
Boy, I don't have a hard start date. Like some comics would be like, oh, November 5th, 2005. They have the set list and everything. I want to say maybe 12 years. So I've been doing it long enough to know to skew less. Because when you first start off, you want to be like, oh, yeah, I've been doing it like 10 years because you want that credibility. And then the more you do it, the more you're like, maybe I should have done more by now. I'm brand new, actually. I've never done a show. I'm surprised I'm even a part of this because I don't know. I saw Jeff Dunham special and I thought, well, what if I didn't have a puppet? And then here I am. So this is, we'll see how it goes. But I've actually never done comedy before. So
how lucky of you to make it this far into this room. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But Minneapolis is where you started. It seems like Acme was your home club. Is that your home club now?
Yes.
So you started in Minneapolis and roughly 12 years ago. So that maybe means to me that you were working and being a comedian at the same time. Like you had a real job and then went full time at some time. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
How many years were you double time in that before? You're full time now, I assume? Or do you still
mostly
work?
full time. Yeah. My wife has a cleaning business, so I'll help her with that every now and then also doing comedy full time. Yeah.
Awesome. So your day job is possibly going into a stranger's home and cleaning a house with your wife.
There are numerous affairs that we've probably kept going by. Affairs, people that should have probably lost custody of their kids that still have custody because we've done such a good job. People that have, we're not crime scene cleanup yet, but I like to think that we could probably help some people get away with murder as well.
Yeah.
It's sloppy. It's sloppy. You watch a lot of true crime and you're like, it wouldn't take too long to clean up a a little bit here.
Have you seen some nasty shit? I mean, tell me the nastiest story.
There was one. There was a lady who was a recovering crackhead. We looked her up because she does TED Talks and stuff. The story is recovering. I mean, not recovered. I guess to be fair, she didn't actually lie. She's recovering. It's still a process. She's not toward the end yet. But there were needles and nails and stuff on the floor. And she had children. She has children that were there, and thanks to us, she still probably has them. I don't know. They could all be dead. But at the time, we did a really good job, and but it was alarming. Like, we felt like, should we call this in? Like, this doesn't seem cool, but she paid in cash, which was nice.
Have you ever had a hoarding situation? Like, you're like, no, we can't do this.
No, well, she's gotten a lot better at looking. She wants pictures first, or she'll go do an inspection, and then I go with, because it's almost like real estate agents, again, to get a little true crimey, like, a lot of real estate agents get murdered where it's just they use a fake name. Hey, sell me on this house. Then she shows up and then they kill her and then they leave. And so not that I provide a lot of muscle, but just to, I could keep track of shit. Can I swear? This is
Absolutely,
probably fine. Yeah.
Please.
I might get lost in your shirt also. This is a very
I know, it's a very
I feel like
cosmic,
David Bowie. Yeah.
We talked about your business with your wife, but in comedy, who are your heroes?
Probably Dennis Miller's a big one. I think you can definitely see a little bit of the influence with that. Bill Maher, a lot of the political comics. Interestingly enough, one of the first comics that I really got into was Jeff Foxworthy, who stylistically I'm not anywhere like, I don't think. But he was the first person that made me realize that you could make a living just by being funny.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like making a living if you live in a one-room apartment in Toledo or something, but still, it's feasible. But George Carlin, and then on a more personal level, like guys and gals that I do know, Chad Daniels, Jackie Cation, a lot of the greats that have passed through Acme too.
Yeah, these are Minneapolis comics that you
Yeah,
mentioned. Like,
Tim Harmston, Mary Mack. Yeah.
did you ever know KP Anderson? Or heard of him?
It sounds familiar. I don't know if I.
He's an old Minnesota comic, and he
Okay.
ended up going out. He was a producer for Talk Soup.
Oh, okay.
And he was somebody that he and I co-featured at Knuckleheads Comedy Club at the Mall of America back in the day. And Michael, this is a New Year's week, right? Weekend. And so it's a co-features, and Michael Winslow is the headliner.
Oh,
and we had
Police
an MC,
Academy.
right?
Yeah.
So KP is like a good-looking guy, boy next door looking guy, but he's filthy, he's dirty, likes to have that shock value, being a really, really dirty comic. And I sing in my show and everything like that. So I go on first, do my singing and, a little happy act. And he gets on stage, he's like, turn that shit off. And, I don't sing. And so during his set, it took the audience a few minutes to get used to his style and my style. And after a while, every night, for that whole week, in the first 10 minutes of his show, for the audience to get used to him talking, and from my set, he would always say in the first 10 minutes, look, folks, I can bring back the singing Jew if you want. And I was getting pissed every night. He was saying this, right? I'm like, you got to bring me down just to do this. So on the Saturday night, first show, I made sure we had a full audience, like 300 people in the crowd. I made sure he was out of the room, and I said, look, the next guy that's coming up here, he does like a really angry guy next door looking kind of thing. And he's going to say something like, hey, folks, you want me to bring back the singing Jew? And when he does, I want you to do me proud. Go fucking crazy. And sure as shit, first 5 minutes, he says, you want me to bring back the singing Jew? This place rises to his feet, turns around towards me, and gives me this big standing ovation. And then he just destroyed me. He's like, so you want the yodeling heave, huh? And but he just buried my ass after that. So we just had a tug of war the whole rest of the week with each other. He even closed with Michael Winslow's closer at the end of his. He did Michael Winslow. He did the stars. He's like, pissed off his tour manager. He's like, you'll never work in this town again. But he did. He came. He went out to L.A. and he big producer, Talk Soup, and all that stuff. Nice. So a lot of great acts have come out of Minnesota. Louis Anderson, Jackie Cation, Chad Daniels, like you mentioned. Did you ever work with Chad?
I did not work. Actually, I opened for him in Fargo back when his home base was Fergus Falls, and it's called the Sanctuary. It was a renovated church that was really cool that he packed out 2 sold-out shows, and it was almost it wasn't even comedy. It was so good. He has such a loyal comedy base where you get there and just little asides would murder, and you'd be like, what? You're like, oh, guys, come on. You you get in front of a good crowd after bombing, and then you're almost like an abused puppy where you're just like, love? Is this really love?
It's
okay.
true.
Well, I have more for you guys then if you like that.
You've heard that saying, you're only as good as your last show. You just go out, you bombed horribly, and then you forget all about it once that next show comes around. You mentioned Fergus Falls. Have you traveled all over Minnesota? I mean, have you done all of the little one-nighters?
I've done Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, the entire Midwest.
Would you characterize those people as different? Like you've been to other places?
There's lots of one-syllable adjectives I would use to describe them, but they're a good comedy audience, I think. And
I agree.
I kind of have a very schizophrenic or split personality set where, I mean, there's half the material I would say is topical, political, and the other half is more family based. Like this special, the Tall Dark Grandpa thing, is almost my I would say Ray Romano side a little bit, where this is my family, this is where I'm at now, dealing with kids, dealing with the wife and father-in-law and stuff like that. And so, but getting back to the political stuff, I mean, I think it's really good if you are going to do that kind of material to perform in front of different groups of people, especially like a dive bar in Wisconsin, where if you're liberal, you would think, oh, they're not they'll laugh at anything as long as it's funny.
Yeah.
In fact, some of those crowds are even better because you get in front of a bunch of super liberal people in California, and they're like, well, that punchline has a target, and that's not I'm like, what are we even doing here?
Why are we analyzing this shit so hard? Yeah, I was just saying that I've always noticed that there's a Minnesota nice, there's a Midwest nice, there's, those audiences, they're different. People say, oh, they're the same everywhere, but they're not.
Yeah.
You said you do political comedy too, right? How much? You said 50-50 with family and political, but what got you interested in doing the political stuff?
It was always an interest. I think growing up watching Saturday Night Live, seeing Weekend Update and stuff, and then taking a deep dive into guys like Dennis Miller, Bill Maher, and then later on like Michael Shea and more of the current stuff. But I also don't watch as much because I'm doing it so much myself, where it's kind of like, okay, this is just what I'm. So my free time isn't political comedy because that's what I spend most of my time writing and trying to create. But it was, the Midwest is a great place to develop as a comedian, I think, because on the coast, I would go out there to do shows, and the host and most of the comics, half their act would be crowd work because it's LA, New York, they're touristy places. So like, oh, where are you from? And and it's like, are there pre-written jokes? Like, am I the hack here by like spending my time trying to come up with a joke that most people should like versus like, no, you're San Francisco, fucking Giants, like, whatever. That's why I don't do crowd work, because I couldn't think of something funny off the top of my head. But I prefer the pre-written stuff myself. But yeah, and the sets are longer too, and so it isn't. When you're on the coast, it's showcase, like always your best five. Mm-hmm. And it's fun to go on stage and just mess around for a while and try to come up with stuff. And you still have like the 10 minutes that you can, even if it hasn't been a good set, still get them back with like, well, these bits will work, and set the table for the next guy.
Yeah. I notice when I'm on the road for a couple of weeks, I kind of get more and more into stepping away from the act that I was doing in my first 5 or 10 minutes. I am just diving into the audience immediately just to see what I'm working with, just to find out what kind of mentality I got, if this is energetic, if I'm getting a good vibe from them, that's good. You mentioned Dennis Miller. Is Rich Miller still up there?
I've met Rich Miller. Yeah, he helps out a little. Well, it's been years probably, but at one point I remember he was helping Lewis, the owner, up there a little bit with some stuff. So, yeah, I did meet Rich. Yeah. And it's crazy too. Because I heard him before I saw him, and he's got the same like Pittsburgh cadence. As a brother, like, Lou, this is what you're doing. Like, oh my God! And it was like, oh, okay, well because he still kind of looks like him, and then like. Wait, did he get into an accident? Like, is that Dennis? And like, no, it's his brother. And you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Oh man, I used to piss that guy off so much because I'd leave him messages, and you always would push 1 if it's a normal message, push 2 if it's an urgent message. Like,
you know what, Ron? You're the only comedian that would just press 2 for the urgent message. It's not that urgent, Ron. I'm like, well, you never fucking called me back. I mean, it's fucking urgent to me. But he talks just like his brother. I love that shit. Let's see. What else? What are your goals in comedy? I mean, what is the ultimate goal? When you got into this, you say, this is what I want to accomplish?
I want to get Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen. I think it's funny to be like something you clearly can't get anymore. Like some old, like, I want a guest appearance on Kate and Alley. Could that happen? Like, because the goalposts have moved so much now where, I mean, definitely a spot on a late night show, but I have friends that have gotten it too. And then it's like, they get into 2 or 3 clubs, and you're like, oh, okay, because there isn't the Johnny Carson show or even Chelsea Lately like a decade ago, where like if you got on Chelsea Lately, then it's like you get an agent and now you're off and running, where there are comics that have gotten several late night shows that like I open for, and they're still like, if you take away the social media, then it's like, I don't know, I can't get into these clubs. It's not. Yeah. And so it's all like self-content, self-generated stuff, which is great for those that can excel at it. I'm trying to get better, but I almost wish there were gatekeepers again. Like, just let me try to entertain the 4 gatekeepers. And then if I don't, then I know, okay, well, recalibrate a little bit. But
I love how you say that.
Yeah.
Because there were gatekeepers back then. It was just these 4 or 5 avenues to get yourself noticed back in the day. Yeah. And now there's all of these different channels now where we talked about it before in other episodes where, YouTubers are filling up comedy clubs and, don't have the gusto to have a great show behind it,
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
And there was the complaint though. It's like, bring back the gatekeepers. And it was like, yeah, the gatekeepers were only looking for straight white male comics. And like, yeah, no, I know, but that would, I mean, it's not the worst thing for me, but that's sort of, yeah.
Yeah, it's been, the genre now. It's the model that we have to follow now. It's not. It's all YouTube and Facebook and social media. It's what we got. It's what we have here.
But I would say, I mean, writing for a show like The Daily Show, or just being able to tour pretty consistently and have an act that I can continuously work on and build on with current events, stuff like that, I suppose, just making it more of a full-time job. I mean, it's definitely, the more you do it, the more your goals kind of shift, where at first you're like, oh, I want to host The Daily Show. And then it's like, I'd write for The Daily Show. And, you know, and they'd be like, I'll be a key grip, you know, like just get me in the room or whatever. So he asked me in 5 years, and it's like, could I just jerk off while it's an act? Like, I don't know, just I want to be involved somehow. Like, I don't even know if he's involved, but he was at one point, so that would still be something.
Yeah, I love it, man. Who should we look out for? Who are the comics that you, when you were growing up, or, you know, somebody that's still in comedy now is like, you know, check this guy out?
Well, pretty much everybody I mentioned when we were talking about the Minneapolis stuff, if they haven't, like Chad Daniels, Jackie Cation, Tim Harmston, Mary Mack, Pete Lee, Laurie Kilmartin.
Laurie Kilmartin. Yeah.
I mean, she didn't come up through the Minneapolis system, but she plays Acme, and she's great. She hosts a podcast with Jackie, and really smart, funny gal.
Yeah, she and I co-headlined in Portland one week, and she's amazing. I think she was a writer for Conan at one time, right? Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that so many people have, I mean, there's so many people on the fringe and so many people that have made it, and, you know, we seem to have like a connection, like a 6 degrees of separation, like Kevin Bacon to these people.
And like every scene kind of has its own reputation comedy-wise, and I definitely take pride in the fact that Minneapolis is known for having really good writers, where Chicago is more like the attitude. Not to take anything away, there's been some great comics that come out of Chicago. I think Kanane was Chicago, but it definitely, when you watch your average Chicago comic, it seems like it's 70% attitude and then 30%, you know, what they're saying. Whereas I think Minneapolis is almost the flip side, where it's like 70% writer and then 30%. There's a few very animated, demonstrative comics, but for the most part, it's your glasses, sort of bookish hoodie, and then like the most bizarre, weird setups and premises and stuff like that. But it's fun, and it kind of, you know, it forces everyone else to get a little bit better too. Or I remember seeing something that David Spade said about Chris Rock, where he'd watch Chris Rock perform and he'd want to be a better writer. And I think in Minneapolis, when you're surrounded by so many good writers, it definitely pushes you to like, okay, I should write something else. I should try to find more jokes for this thing. Yeah.
Every time I watch Bill Burr, I want to quit.
Yeah.
Every time. Every time. It's just like, man, I'm just insignificant compared. It's just so well-structured jokes and callbacks and the way, you know, he goes about things. What would you say have been your biggest struggles? I mean, have you had any kind of hard times in comedy that you would say, man, this fucking business is kicking my ass?
Well, I think my biggest struggle is putting myself out there, and maybe that's a Midwest thing, where I like to be able to just perform, I let the work speak for itself, and that's it, you know? So I don't want to spend like 6 hours working on this clip, and then I post it, and then it gets like 18 likes, and you're like, well, what was the fucking point of it? You know? And there are some comics that I love and I think are funny, but they have like 15 minutes of material, and they have 80K followers, whatever, on there, and it's like, okay, I mean, that's the skill, and that's the skill you need to get better at for the way things are right now. But as far as hard times, I don't know. I don't.
Did you have any hard time getting booked because of being a political comedian?
Yes, that's true. I've had bookers tell me like, political comedy doesn't fly, and it's frustrating. I sort of blame Trump a little bit, and not for the reason that people might think, but I think Trump made a lot of bad comics think they could do political comedy, where it would just be like, oh, his hair, or some dumb thing, or they would just like shit on Trump without an actual punchline and irritate all these conservative crowds and burn the political comedy bridge, where it's like, well, that was a bad comic. Like, just watch a clip. I'm making fun of Biden too. It's clever stuff. And like we talked about, I perform in dive bars in Wisconsin, Iowa, wherever. And it's a lot of pro-Trump people, but you don't get soapboxy with it. You make fun of everybody. You make fun of yourself, and they're okay with it. But yeah, definitely there's I think there's a leeriness with a lot of clubs and bookers to be like, oh, political comedy. Like, it's everywhere now. I mean, Trump didn't go away. Another election's coming up. Like, it kind of seems, especially in an art form where you don't really have any censors, you can just tell it like it is, to then be like, well, I don't know if they might get offended. Or like, well, then they get offended. Yeah. Like, Emo Phillips had a funny joke one time. Another one, legend, obviously, but most comedy people know him. But if you like comedy and you
Absolutely.
don't know, he had a really funny bit about when he was on stage and a joke didn't go well, which is rare. And it might have been set up to do this joke, but he talked about how when dumb people go to a comedy show and don't like it, they blame the comedian. And when smart people go, they blame themselves for not actually doing some research and looking it up. And they're like, this is on me. So he's like, I feel like some of you should have done some research.
That's well said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah, but just look up the performer and stuff. And it's not, political comedy is like any, like, observational comedy. Okay, well, if your observations are all about, fucking dogs and whatever, and you're like, well, I'm an observational comic. Yeah, but that might turn off a lot of people. But depending, it's just a label. But you have to, like, actually watch the comic and see what material they're doing and stuff.
Do you get to a place and say, I'm in a pretty liberal place, I shouldn't do that many Trump jokes? Or, do you call an audible based on where you are?
Well, it's funny, too, because I wouldn't even, after doing this whole thing about labeling yourself a political comic, I think I'm more of just like a current event. That's what it's rooted in. So it's not like I go up there and I say I'm liberal or I'm conservative. I just start talking about current whatever, events. Israel, Hamas, or abortion, or whatever the news is. And then I just do enough on kind of like dance on one side, dance on the other side. You do a pro-gun bit here, pro-abortion bit here. Like, well, there's, it's, so there are some parallels, but I like to leave them guessing a little bit. And then I think as long as you're not throwing out labels and stuff, and you never know with crowds too. There's been some where I've tried doing the family stuff, the grandma wife stuff, being a step-grandpa, and it kind of goes so-so. And then I go right into like Biden, Trump, and then they love it. And I'm like, wow, okay, so you guys enjoy. I think a lot of people do enjoy the political stuff when it's done well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see your set tonight.
Oh, thank you.
You're talking about your special a little bit. Now, the grandpa is part of the title. What is the title of your special?
Tall, Dark, and Grandpa.
Tall, Dark, and Grandpa.
Yeah. So this, like I kind of hinted, is more of my Ray Romano set, where I think, because I haven't really done it before, so it's kind of my challenge to myself, but to have the full set of just all, for the most part, family stuff. Like I was a single guy. I was a substitute teacher. That was my job when I was doing comedy before. And then I met and fell in love with a grandma. So I became an instant grandpa. And that's my Instagram handle is Instagrandpa. And so suddenly I went from having no family to the most family. And so that's where a lot of the humor is based out of for this set. Yeah,
that's interesting. I love it.
Yeah,
I appreciate you making the trip. Whenever we do our vidcast, we always like to find some kind of fun product, something that we can play around with, or something that's useful and cool.
Okay.
So we started out with ball hammock underwear, and thank God we've gotten through that. You don't have to. I'm wearing some right now, but I'm not going to subject you to that shit.
Sure.
So
that's.
Do you have a phone mount on your car? Do you have anything that holds your phone?
I do. It's been broken a few times, but yeah.
Been going through a lot of different phone mounts and trying a bunch of different ones out. We have one that's like a magnetic one that you put in your vent. And this one I found that you actually put on your mirror. This is one that you put and it can swing left or right.
Okay.
Your phone. So I got it here.
It's not blocking the rear view mirror, is it? Because that would, okay.
No, yeah. It's latching onto the mirror.
Because that makes it look like it's on the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally on, and it's hidden behind it.
Okay.
So what this thing is, you see that it clicks onto the mirror, but then you can hide it by putting it up here, right? And then this thing slides down, and you can put it over here, but then check this out. This also comes down a little bit further, and you can slide this down like that.
Okay.
So this is a pretty cool phone mount. It might be in the way for some teen drivers, I found, that it might get in the way of your vision, but if you keep it over on this side, you can do it.
Yeah.
Or down here like that. But this is a pretty cool phone mount. If you're interested in buying one of these things, click on the link below, and you can get one of your own phone mounts there with the Amazon link below to this phone mount that you can get online.
sometimes you're parallel parking, but you want to finish watching the pornographic clip that you started watching, and now you can just move it to the
plop that
side.
baby right
yeah,
on there.
and you and
Look
them
at the
can,
curb.
Yeah, finish
and
at the
tits
same
at the same
exactly.
time.
Yeah,
I like your style.
Yep.
That's cool. So anyway, so as far as traveling, do you hope to like be a road comic someday and just be full time on the road? Is that an aspiration of yours?
Ideally, yeah. And then my grandma wife could pull back from the cleaning stuff because she's got some other projects she liked to do, but it wouldn't involve like a home base. So we would just travel together and do that.
How many grandkids?
5.
And you
I
married
think there's
into
5
five
right now.
grandkids?
Well,
Or how
there
many
weren't
were
5 at the time.
Okay.
There was, I think, 1 at the time. But her ex-husband, she's Italian, and her ex-husband is Puerto Rican. So when you combine the Puerto Rican libido with the Italian lack of contraception, it's only a matter of time before you have a litter. And so she's got several kids, and now the grandkids. It's a very reproductive family.
I've heard of the Puerto Rican libido. It's God bless you, man. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did you meet your wife?
I met her. Well, we met online. We met on Tinder.
All right.
Yeah, and
Wow.
then I invited her to a Wednesday night show because part of it was like, I mean, let's just. Like this is my life, so if this is going to be a thing, you
should see it.
Watch me at a comedy club on a Wednesday. But yeah, we hit it off, and she kind of just laid her cards on the table with, well, I'm a grandma. And then what I heard was like, okay, no pressure for kids because I didn't want any biological children, but the grandkids is fine. I'm still not raising it. It's like substitute teaching, but for home, like substitute teaching home. Because then it's like, I'm not like here, they're yours. Like I'll watch them for a little bit, but
you're not a grandpa in the traditional sense of the word.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be left alone with you. They don't leave the kids alone.
They're
with you?
not. Well, that's the whole other thing. Is like, when they're a little bit older, I think like part of it is I probably could, but I think responsibility is a very overrated quality to have, quite frankly, because it only helps out other people. Because the more reliable you are, the more shit that you have to deal with.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I've learned that by not being a good babysitter for the babies, I don't have to do that anymore. So I'll get them when they're a little bit older, and that's fine. We can play catch or go to a game or something or a movie, and then I can do it. But
it's good to say that you don't know how to do certain shit. Like, I don't know how to make the food. The kid is going to starve. I don't know how to fold towels. I can't do laundry. Mm-hmm. It's a good attribute. That's a good attitude, man.
Yeah. I think at one point, I think I actually said the line like, what do you mean I can't leave him alone? And that was... That horrified everybody. And it was more like, I don't know, I've never had kids. I thought you could, he's laying there. He's probably fine.
They
right?
said
I
they
was
were
going to come back.
fine playing in the street.
Yeah.
They said you let them do that.
I mean, how many do we have? We could stand to lose one, right? I mean, mathematically, the farm can go on, I feel like. You enjoy making them, right? Here's a chance to...
I'm curious about something. Have you performed in Florida before?
I'm trying to remember... I feel like at some point, I mean, part of it is you're on the road, and I know I've been here several times before because my wife spent part of her childhood growing up here.
Okay.
But maybe just an open mic, not like a club.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tonight is your initiation pretty much for a full set.
Tonight and I appreciate the talking slower because that's I like heckling. A lot of comics like interact with hecklers, and with my style because it is very rat-a-tat-tat, almost like a Dennis Miller thing. I can just kind of speed it up, and then I notice a lot of self-policing, like shut the fuck up. And so I have a tendency to go a little fast, so I'll definitely slow it down.
It's a true thing here.
Yeah.
It's honest to God. I mean, I have noticed that. We have an older audience here. Mm-hmm. And for people that don't know, what we do in our filmings is we have 3 comics filming in one night, and each of them do half-an-hour sets. So they're following each other, and we have 3 headliners in one show, which is a huge deal to have 3 headliners in one show because you're following somebody who's a powerhouse as well. You're following somebody that is going to have an amazing set, and you got to go on stage and ride that wave into the shore. Mm-hmm. So does that make you nervous at all? I mean, being in a new surrounding like Florida and in a taping situation, I just appreciate, because we've asked a lot of you for doing that, and I appreciate it.
I think you do enough nightmare gigs and you develop some armor. Where there was one time I was opening for a buddy of mine, Mike Brody, Minneapolis guy. Check him out. He's got some specials out there too and some albums. We were doing a gig in South Dakota it was a double gig. The first was a VFW, and that was fine. It was packed. They were great. And then we tacked on this other gig at a bar wherever the corn maze is. I don't expect. Why would? That's, if, again, know where you are. But if this was in the Midwest, people would be like, that's the corn maze. That's where it's a Taj Mahal for the.
Right.
Anyway, farmers, I don't know. So it's this bar, and they didn't advertise comedy. No one knew what was happening. I was featuring and / emceeing because they didn't have a host or anything. And I just remember there was the stage. There was 15 feet of nothing, because later on was going to be a band, and it was like the dance floor. And then in the back was the bar, and there were just like 4 guys, and they were watching like bowling on television. And then I just got up to start talking. I remember one of the guys turned around and was like, "Don't." And that was all he said. And I was like, "You think I want to do this? Like, if they gave me my $75, I would stop right now. But they're holding you guys hostage is what's happening right now." And so I literally did a half hour to the back of like 4 or 5 people and a big buck hunter game, which if you guys don't know is an arcade game where you pretend to kill deer. Self-explanatory, but my competition entertainment-wise for the night.
Right?
Yeah.
The bar or the casino game. Mm-hmm. Man, so many of these gigs that we've shown up to are just hell gigs. I remember, did you ever do triple gigs back in?
No. I had a buddy of mine, Mike Lester, also check him out, did a triple run too, and he came back a changed man.
Yeah, that's
it was
what
almost
I grew
like
up
Deer
with.
Hunter, I think. Like
It is.
He was such a yeah, and then he came back and it was like, I can't tell you what happened, but I'm not the same.
It's getting like thrown to the dogs. It's
Yeah.
great training for back in the day. There used to be a place up in it was in Grand Forks, North Dakota, called the Westward Ho. And
I performed. Well, not
did you
the
do
Westward Ho, but yeah.
it was in the Comedy Gallery had that gig up in Grand Forks, and they had a house MC there. So guys like Doug McCraw, Brent Allen, I want to say, did that little Shannon. Do you know? I can't remember Shannon. I can't remember. Anyway, a ton of guys would be there. They'd be the house MC, and that was like a boot camp for that kind of gig. And so many Minneapolis comics did that. But so much work in the Midwest too. That's the great thing I love about the Midwest is being centered in Minneapolis, and there's an 8-hour radius of so much shit going on.
Indy,
That's a
Chicago, Madison, yeah.
People don't, realize what a great center of comedy that is. If you want to be a working comic, that's one of the best places to be, is in the Midwest of all places, just because of proximity to so many gigs. I've been all over Wisconsin just because of that.
Which is funny, because then you get to a coast, and all they care about on the coast is working the road and being, because they just have like their 5 or 6 bar shows or maybe the one club they're in. And I think you get it in your head where it's like, oh, if I could just get into the Comedy Store, if I could just get into the Cellar. But then I have friends that do that, and they're still like, well, yeah, I make like $50 a set or $75 a set. And then it's like, okay, well, until someone sees me and is like, we want you in the thing. I still have to work. I still have to, keep
point?
on. Yeah. What is that'd be a good name for the special. What's the point?
What's the point?
Yeah.
Why the fuck am I doing this?
There's a
Have you
noose
ever-
behind you. Yeah.
You ever wanted to go to LA, New York, and do that?
Oh, yeah. I've split my time a few years ago. I kind of divided my time between Minneapolis and LA for a little bit. And I think part of it is almost an ego thing where, because I've been at open mics there with headliners that I know, respect, that have TV credits. And it's the same pulling your name out of a thing. And he didn't even get his name drawn. And I was like, what are we doing here? This guy's been on national. He's got credits. You can't put him up for 5 minutes to bomb in front of 4 hipsters. And, what's the point to any of this?
Doesn't that bring it down to earth when you see some guy with all these credits? He's sold out Carnegie Hall, and he's drawing names from a fucking hat for 5 minutes at the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
That'll bring it. I
and
realized,
he had to buy his own ice mocha frappe thing,
right.
so he's in the red. He's lost $8.
I realized that life comes full circle when I was in Montana in a Geo Metro. Jimmy Walker on the right seat.
Dynamite
Jimmy Walker,
Yeah.
telling me about the way it was in comedy and driving around cold-ass Montana. And just like, man, this guy was the comedian of the decade on Time Magazine, in the 70s. And now he's in a Geo Metro with Ron Feingold. Shit is fleeting. So it really brought it down to earth for me. He was weird. Jimmy Walker's he's a weird guy.
He's still doing it, right?
He's still doing comedy.
What is he, like 400 years old?
I would put him at 70 years old now, at least 70 years old. And the funny thing is, I don't know if he's going to appreciate me saying, but this is open bar. We talk about anything. I saw him. We were on the same plane together, and he was sick as shit. And he was trying to hide himself. He had a hood on, and I knew we were playing the same city. He was in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was in Norfolk, Virginia. And we were on the same flight, and he's sick, and he's sitting in his chair. He's got his hood on, and he's got a snot rocket in his nose. Just keeping it right there in his nose is this big snot rocket just sitting in his seat. Jimmy Walker and the snot rocket, just making sure nobody talks to him. Nobody's going to talk to you if you got a snot rocket in your seat. Just Kleenex in your nose. But yeah, it brought it all down to earth, man. Everything is cyclical. Fame is cyclical. Life is cyclical. And, we're going to try to bring you around the big circle with your special, man. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So it's called, give me the name one more time.
Tall, Dark, and Grandpa.
Tall, Dark, and Grandpa.
I was one of the few grandpas that didn't have to worry when COVID came around. And you're in Florida, so no one worried here. But in other parts of the country, I think people were concerned about it. But yeah, I was like, the only grandpa I think that could just be like, you know what? Go ahead, give it to me. I'll be fine.
This is going to be a great experiment because you said that, your stuff really isn't out there yet, that you didn't really put much effort into getting some clips out there, and that's what we do. So
perfect.
We want to get it out there and get your name out there and get your message out there. I'm glad that you're doing open bar,
I appreciate
man.
that. Thanks.
You being with
yeah,
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.